104.4, the home of SAFM in Durban. SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader.
SAFM, of course, can be found nationwide. We're on 104 to 107 FM, and you are currently with Lizette Khan. I'm standing in for Ashraf Gada on media at SAFM. We are basically just got, 25 minutes left up until 10 o'clock. We were here from 8 to 10. If you weren't here this morning, you've missed out on a great show. Some very, very interesting discussions, but the action does continue. So in studio with me at the moment, I've got Willy Seyama, who is the founder of Initiate. Willy, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Lizzie.
Now, just looking at Facebook, they obviously announced in June that they now have 2 billion monthly active users on social media, on this particular site. How many, if you have to break that down, how many of the Facebook users actually come from Africa?
Well, interestingly, if I can take one step back, we've been doing analytics forever as part of our service offering at Initiate. It's not the first time we are doing analysis on Facebook, and we've also done it on the other social networks, including LinkedIn, which was last year.
Mm-hmm.
When we saw the announcement that Facebook has now hit over 2 billion people, we thought, okay, let's go look to see how many of those come from Africa. And we found the number. To be exact, as at the 23rd of July,
that's a few days ago.
The number was sitting at 203 million Africans on Facebook. In this case, using the right definition, it is the monthly active users of Facebook. So there's 203 million of them from the
African continent.
Yes.
And if you had to break that down further, how many come from South Africa in particular? Do you have the numbers for that?
Yes, I do. From South Africa specifically, it's 18 million Facebookers. Okay. Now, when you look at from a continent perspective, this is a growth of 39% versus last year.
That's a phenomenal growth, 39%.
It's huge. Interestingly enough, though, South Africa alone, the growth from South Africa was only 29%. So one wonders where is the growth coming from, and we looked at top 5 African countries, and the bulk of this growth is coming from North Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to see. But let's just take one step back. Let's start with South Africa, and then we'll move up north, for lack of a better way of putting it. You said that South Africa's growth has been 29% as opposed to the continent's growth, which has been 39%. Do you think that broadband and connectivity and the cost of data in South Africa has anything to do with that?
I think there is something to be said about that, and in fact, again, it might explain why North Africa is growing at the rate that it is. Certainly, the cost of data, which we also wrote quite a bit about over the last few years, has an impact in so far as the growth of Facebook users in South Africa, and also the penetration, because our penetration on Facebook is one of the lowest on the continent right now.
If I might just ask, is there, and I don't know if you've done any of the data of looking at the other besides LinkedIn, looking at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, do you think that in South Africa there's been a decrease with regards to users on those on Facebook as a social media network, because there's been an uptake on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and those other social media platforms?
I haven't done the comparative study across the board, but I can tell you that we're not doing well on Twitter either.
Oh. If I'm looking at the tours, it looks like we're doing really well on Twitter.
Look, we have the very active Twitterers from South Africa, but we're not necessarily doing that great on Twitter as well. Growth is coming from elsewhere on the continent, as it were.
It's very interesting because, and maybe this is just one of those things when it comes to perception, and when you're sitting in the moment and you're scrolling through your Twitter timeline or your Facebook timeline, and all these stories are just popping up. So it does seem like there's a huge influx of individuals that are actually on these platforms. Whereas, what is it? Is it just because it's a small amount of people, but they're just really active?
It is. In fact, if I can digress for 1 second, now that you're talking Twitter, on average, it is found that only 5% of people on Twitter are the most active. The rest of us are listening.
Wow.
So the stuff that we see on Twitter, with a lot of topics that are hitting the Twitter sphere, 5% of the people are the ones who are really active. And we know the names
yes,
in
we
South
do.
Africa.
We do know those names.
So
the rest of us are just voyeurs. We're just sitting there and watching. So it's basically reality TV playing itself out on the Twitter sphere or on Facebook, on social media.
At best, we retweet.
Now, tell us about Facebook penetration in the rest of Africa. You said North Africa is making huge strides. What do you think has attributed to those huge strides that they have made?
There is certainly something to be said about the cost of data. Mm-hmm. Certainly there is something there. We must remember that the Arab Spring, it happened in North Africa. Now, when you look at the numbers before I get to penetration, Egypt is leading on the African continent. It's sitting currently with 44 million Facebook users. When you break that down, for every 5 Facebook users on the continent, one of them is coming from Egypt.
Oh, my word. Okay.
They grew versus last year by 38%.
Yeah.
That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And remember that Egypt has got about 80 million people, so their penetration is more than 50% as we speak. Algeria is the next one, sitting at 25 million. They grew by 67% in the last year. And then follows Nigeria, the most populous country on the continent. They're sitting at a measly 19%. 90 million Facebookers, and they grew by 19% in the last year. Then it's Morocco and us. We're both sitting at 18 million, us meaning South Africa. Morocco grew by 50%. We grew by 29%.
So they grew by 50% to get to the 18 million. Is it also, and this is just me postulating, when you're in, like South Africa has a very active media presence. So if you're able to watch news and you're able to watch your CNN, you're able to watch Al Jazeera and all the rest of those stations, and they give you a different world view. Whereas, like, let's take Egypt, for example, their media system doesn't necessarily have all the different world views. Whereas if you then go onto a social media platform, you're bombarded with, the global village. Could that be one of the reasons why?
One might be inclined to think so, and it's interesting you mentioning Egypt, because we know there's been a clampdown of media.
Yeah.
And yet, on Facebook, they're growing at phenomenal rates. So it looks like Assisi is not, touching the Facebook studio as things stand. They're really very active, and we're seeing it in the numbers, as it were. And if I can run you just quickly through the penetration numbers: Egypt 46%, Algeria 61%. Nigeria 10% only, Morocco 51%, South Africa 32%, and the average of the top 5 countries is 30%. What do we mean by penetration? We take the number of Facebook users, we divide that by the population in the country. So I actually lied when I said Egypt is more than 50. They're sitting at 46%. Yeah.
Willy, thank you so much. Really appreciated the chat. It was very penetrating, I must say. Very, very interesting.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We're going to come back with Tony Curry, who's going to be talking to us about he's a media monitoring specialist, and we're going to be looking at a weekly analysis of the top stories of the week from the different media platforms.
104.4, the home of SAFM in Durban. SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader.